Welcome to another video from Gweilo 60. Today we're going to be talking about, can Chinese people live wherever they want in China? Well, that all depends on which city you want to live in. In the past, no. You have a family hukou that says you're supposed to live, say, in Nanning City, or in Binyang, or in Bobai. That means that although you can move to Nanning, when you move to Nanning, you'll never have a family hukou in Nanning. Up until just a couple years ago, but I'll get into that. When you move to Nanning from Bobai and you want to put your children in school, you're paying for it. See, children go to school here. If you have a family hukou in that city, well, then you're allowed to go to school. Up until, I think it was about 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, we owned an apartment in San Yutsen. It's in a nice area of Nanning City. Well, a rich guy from Fenchengong, it's a port city just south of Nanning, bought our apartment because it was right next door to the number 2 Nanning High School, so his daughter could go to school at that school. You see, up until about 4 years ago, you weren't allowed, if you weren't from Nanning, you didn't have a family hukou from Nanning, you weren't allowed to buy a house in Nanning or an apartment in Nanning. So people from other areas couldn't come to Nanning. Well, they could come to Nanning and live here, but they couldn't put their children in school unless they paid a hefty price to put their children in school. Also, if you're in an area of Nanning, that dictates what school your child goes to. So, and that's true in the West too. So you want the best school for your kids. So the best school is in more rich areas. Yes, it is. See, and that only came in about 4 years ago. Now you see a lot of people moving into Nanning City from other communities because they've got money and they can buy a place. See, this policy of moving to a different community, but if you're a renter in that community, you don't have a family hukou in that community, then your children can't go to school in that community unless you pay a big price for it. So all of these migrant workers from small villages around China, you hear about them moving to Beijing they're migrant workers and they're living in rental units and they get kicked out of these rental units. Well, really they're not supposed to be there because their family hukou is from a different area of China. But you hear about all these left at home children. Why is that? Because the parents maybe moved to Beijing or moved to a third tier city from a village, like moved to Nanning. Well, they leave their children in their hometown with grandma or grandpa or both of them if they're still alive. And the reason for this is that they can't afford to come to Nanning, rent an apartment, pay for school for their children, after school pay for somebody to watch the children, you know, so it makes more sense financially for them to leave those children behind in the smaller communities, in the villages. Like those two little sweethearts in the pictures that I have from Bobai. They're left at home children and they have been, I've never seen their parents, and I've been there since they were just little children and I've never seen one of their parents ever. So, you know, these children are left behind because of this policy of not being able to move from community to community to community easily. You can do it, but it's very difficult and financially constraining. Another thing, Lisa, the girl with the Porsche, her husband has a factory in Suzhou, and Suzhou is in Guangdong province, north of Hong Kong. It's a smaller town, village type thing where labor costs are cheaper, rent on factory property is cheaper. Well, he's over there all the time. She's in Nanning all the time because her kids have to go to school in Nanning. They could go to school in Suzhou, they'd have to pay for it, but in Suzhou they don't speak the same language. So although you're going to be educated in Mandarin Chinese, your daily life is in your local Suzhou language. So it'd be hard on the children, so so the kids and the wife stay in Nanning, and he goes to Suzhou and works, and he comes back maybe twice a year. I haven't seen him for about 3 years, but I know he was back last year once. You know, so the idea that the language barriers from community to community to community is difficult here too. So this policy about you know, not being able to move around China as freely as you would in a Western country is one of the reasons. When I met my wife, oh, I'm from Nanning City, I'm from the capital city of Guangxi province, and you know, sort of like live in Regina, it's the capital city of Saskatchewan, you know, it's not a big deal. But you see, here it is a big deal because it is so hard to move from smaller communities to bigger communities to better communities to, you know, having a higher end life. You know, so when Wei Fong was telling me this, I didn't get it until a couple years later, when I started to see the left at home children, starting to see the workers coming in, renting apartments, no children around ever. And you know, don't these people have children? Yeah, but they're back in their village because they can't afford to put them in school because they have to pay for it. Well, and you know, so that's one of the things that is really hard to deal with in China is that the mobility of people here, they just don't have it as we do in the West. So I guess that's one of the bad things about China, where you're not free to go live where you want. You see, in Nanning, it was about 4 years ago when they allowed people from outside communities to buy properties in Nanning. Probably because things weren't selling as good as they were before, and they wanted to bolster the real estate business in Nanning City, or not, I don't know. But I'm sure that in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, they still have this rule where people that don't have a hukou, from a family hukou from that particular city, they're not allowed to go and buy property in that city. So that keeps I guess the people that aren't supposed to be there, according to the Chinese government, away from that tier 1 or tier 2 city. I'm pretty sure in Beijing and Shanghai, Guangzhou, Chengdu, places like that, they don't allow people to just come in and buy from anywhere in China. You notice I'm by the lake again today. You know, this has become one of my favorite places to do videos because it's sort of quiet. Wow, they've got some construction going on next door here, but it's sort of quiet and picturesque, and it's hard to find a quiet place where you can just rant in China. Usually there's people coming up behind you, and you know, yeah. So anyway, and that's another short video from Gweilo 60. If you like my videos, as always, like, comment, subscribe, push that share button. Thanks for watching. Bye now. Look at how soft this tree is. I mean, I've never seen nothing like this before in my life. Like soft, like you can, and it's got chalky.